Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Welcome to Nevada Newsmakers. On the program today, Bryan Wachter joins us. He's president of the Retail Association of Nevada, and here for the whole show, an all-new Nevada Newsmakers.
Like a traditional handmade basket, retail is woven into the fabric of life in Nevada. From big box to mom and pop, retail supports our communities in countless ways. Jobs for the disabled, team uniforms for kids, help for the elderly, and so much more. Retail employs over 1 in 10 workers. Retail supports Nevada, and we support retail.
RANNV.org.
Take a look at Pro Group Management and see how your workers' comp requirements can be met head-on. By taking a proactive approach, Pro Group can assure that your company is meeting or exceeding state and federal standards. As you move forward in your industry, Pro Group moves with you, simplifying regulatory tasks, clearing the way so you can get the job done and look to your future success. Pro Group Management. Workers' comp that works for you.
Meet Nevada Health Link, Nevada's official health insurance marketplace. Your link to savings, selection, free assistance, and name brand health insurance, where 90% of enrollees lower the cost of their monthly premium. Everyone deserves access to quality health coverage, no matter your income or family size. Visit NevadaHealthLink.com. A few minutes could save you hundreds of dollars per month.
Nevada Health Link. Our plans are made for your plans.
As you know, Reno is booming. Toll's development company is helping it grow with insightful design and development, building community with every project, adding beauty, adding excitement, emphasizing our shared humanity. Reno is becoming bigger. Toll's development is helping it become better, more livable, more enjoyable. To learn more, go to tollsdevelopment.com. tollsdevelopment.com.
This is Nevada Newsmakers with host Sam Shad on No Holds Barred Political Forum. Now, from the Nevada Newsmakers broadcast headquarters, here is Sam Shad.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we're always pleased to welcome back to the program Bryan Wachter. He is the president of the Retail Association of Nevada. Welcome, sir.
Thanks so much, Sam.
Want to start out with Thanksgiving. Looked like it went pretty well.
We did. We, had a record number of Nevadans shop over that holiday weekend. They spent a record number of dollars, and we anticipate that our projection for a 4% growth from last year may be a bit too low at this point, Sam. So we're excited to see how the rest of December pans out.
Okay. What is your optimism at this point with forecasts for the Christmas season?
Well, we forecasted at 4%, so I'm going to stick with that number. But what we saw over the, Thanksgiving weekend and into Cyber Monday is folks have budgeted for their holiday purchases. They're being very value conscious. They're being very price conscious, but they are being very confident that they are purchasing gifts during the holiday season. And so we actually anticipate the largest share of total retail sales in Nevada over the holiday period to occur in 2025. It'll actually be 26% of retail sales for the year we're anticipating to take place during the holiday season.
That's great. Is a lot of this being put onto credit cards at this point? I mean, not that people don't use credit cards, period, even if they pay them off every month. But do you think, because of the way the economy has been, that people are putting themselves in debt to be able to pay for the holiday versus having an abundance of cash?
No, there's no question that a lot of these purchases are being pushed to credit. But I think you're going to find that every household is figuring out what their access to credit and what that looks like and how they're budgeting that. So we also saw, because of this reason, shopping start the earliest that we've ever seen it, Sam. And more people were finished before the holiday weekend over Thanksgiving than ever before. We've seen so many of those holiday purchases move to October, and retailers are really meeting that demand in October, starting a lot of those deals. And so folks are able to spread a lot of these purchases over multiple paychecks.
How, if at all, are the tariffs affecting the purchasing?
Tariffs are starting to enter into the supply chain. There was It was well known that that was the direction that the president was going when he was reelected. And so retailers really started kind of stockpiling inventory before those tariffs took place over April. And then they've been on again, off again at different levels at different times. And so that pre-stocking supply has, run out of the system. And so all of these new things that are coming in are subject to those tariffs. I think where you'll find the largest place that this has had an impact, Sam, is kind of in that drop shipping market, or folks who are now used to buying things direct from manufacturers. Those now all have a bunch of tariffs. And so you're seeing, prices double from what consumers were expecting to pay, just 8-9 months ago.
Do you think that, when we see the potential for the extension of the Obama funding help with, in medical insurance. Sorry, I'm stumbling here because it's Monday morning. But the medical insurance, that this is going to affect retail if you start to see people having to pay much, much larger rates for their insurance?
Well, it's not going to affect just retail. It's going to affect the economy at large, right? So we've seen salary and wage growth, certainly not to the extent that we have seen inflation and tariff growth. And so households are already feeling like they're behind on that. When you then take, money from the discretionary pile and then have to start spending that on healthcare, or spending that on additional housing costs, you are going to then disrupt the retail economy, the service economy. Auto dealers are starting to see loans being pushed out. They're starting to see folks hang on to cars longer. This has a cascading domino effect across the entire economy. And so whether or not you are personally going to have your premiums increase, there is going to be some pain in the economy because of it.
Yes, and with the midterms coming up and getting very serious as of January 1, it'll be interesting to see if Congress starts to push back on some of this stuff.
Well, we've seen some symbolic votes in the last week in the Senate. Both of those went nowhere. We don't seem to have a House that can agree, even in the majority party on a path forward. The president himself has flip-flopped on this issue several times. So I think if we are looking to the federal government for help or an answer, we should start looking somewhere else, Sam.
So the net result of that is, the pundits always talk about, when you have an election cycle right after a presidential cycle, that the opposing party tends to pick up seats. How do you view this? Do you think it's going to be somewhat of a landslide?
Well, I think the RNC chair over the weekend warned of dire consequences and said the party is getting ready to lose massively. So I don't know that we have to take this to the pundit level. When the chair of the RNC is suggesting that things are going to, I think, stack on top of each other. You have that, what you're talking about, that midterm opposition push. You've got tariffs, you have the economy. You have a president who's suggesting that affordability is made up. All of those are going to create headwinds as we move into the midterm election.
Yeah, it's funny, to compare the previous administration. President Biden was pushing Bidenomics as being greatly successful when the majority of the country wasn't feeling very successful. So it seems to have gone from one regime to the other with the same kind of doublespeak.
No, I mean, that's an excellent point. The talking points are almost verbatim. I would be interesting to see, right, where the U.S. economy might be had we not had the upward pressure on tariffs and the Fed had able to kind of roll out their projected plan as they wanted to. Who knows where the economy would be at the moment? I think all we can say is that all of this together has led us to where, in our recent polling, Sam, folks are saying that it has been overwhelmingly difficult to catch up to household expenses in today's economy. Tells us what voters are actually feeling.
Do you also feel that the massive debt, $38 trillion, has really caused a revaluation of the value of the money in your pocket?
I'm a less concerned. I mean, the dollar is still the standard currency across the world. It remains that we've got some upward pressure there with some of the BRICS countries trying to look at how they can destable that. But the United States is still at the moment a secure place to be putting your dollars. There's a chance to be able to turn some of this off. The Supreme Court can answer some questions on tariffs, and that could lower some temperature. And so we could still see things start turning around, but it's going to require a course correction, and it requires actual leadership. So I think if we stay on the same course we're in, Sam, then I think the chair of the RNC is probably correct. But I do believe that we're in a window of time that we could turn the U.S. economy around.
It's been interesting. I interviewed Mark Amadei for a show that's coming out this week, and I asked him about Speaker Johnson's ability to retain his seat, and he was very confident that the Speaker would remain in that despite overwhelming press, including from Speaker Johnson, saying that he was not sure he was going to be able to stay there.
I think if you take a look at the long history of Republican speakers, they eat their own, Sam. I mean, you go back to Newt Gingrich, who resigned kind of in disgrace. You went to Hastert, who is now a convicted sex offender. We went to Boehner, who, got kicked out of his job, to Paul Ryan, who left government service 3 years later because he was just over all of it, to McCarthy, who was ousted 9 months later, to the congressman from Louisiana. So, I mean, this seems to be a pattern, at least in modern history. Marjorie Taylor Greene has already thrown up another discharge position before she retires from Congress. The chair of the Democratic caucus, or I think former chair, Stefanik, she's made some very negative comments towards the speaker. Is this emblematic of where we're going to be, or is this emblematic of a problem with Johnson's leadership? And I think it's scary. We probably don't know the answer to that.
And it makes Nancy Pelosi's reign as Speaker look quite impressive by comparison.
I think give it, some credit where it's due. We may not like an overzealous government, but we like a very stable government, and we don't seem to have had one of those in quite a few number of years. So.
And the point being there, that business not only likes but needs a stable environment to be able to operate in and invest in.
Well, especially for an industry that we put down multi-year $million investments into a supply chain that is going to pay off over the next 25, 50 years. And so it makes that incredibly difficult to make long-term supply chain investments that aren't going to pay off for decades later when current policy seems to be changing on a dime and at a whim.
All right, let's take a break. More with Bryan Wachter when we come back.
It's a good time to eat. It's a good time to play.
It's a good time to win.
Times a tamarack.
Welcome to Story County, where history meets innovation, and a pioneering spirit continues to shape our future. At the heart of the Tahoe Reno Industrial Center, we power the future with global leaders in technology and manufacturing, driving progress that reaches far beyond our county lines. From advanced manufacturing to tech innovation, our industries are creating thousands of quality careers, fueling a vibrant economy that benefits every Nevadan. But it's more than just growth. Our community is our foundation, supporting families, empowering local initiatives, and creating a place where everyone belongs. Be part of a legacy built on bold ideas and boundless possibilities. Join us in building a brighter future right here in Story County. Story County, helping build Nevada's future.
This is Nevada Newsmakers.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Bryan Wachter. He is the president of the Retail Association in Nevada. Looking back at the session, the special session, what went wrong with the film tax bill? Was there no counting or accurate counting of votes prior to the session? Because it seems to me that in most special sessions, you already have the votes before you go in, otherwise you don't go in.
It's like my major problem with romantic comedies, Sam, is they could be solved in the first 5 minutes with a line of dialogue because it's an hour and a half of miscommunication. I think there's a little bit of that metaphor that could be applied here. I do think normally there are some conversations that take place. I think what we had here was several people had several things that they wanted to get done, and it was kind of put together to see what we could accomplish. But there were some big wins coming out of the special session, Sam, and I think there are some things that people can be very proud of. Nevada took some steps to take ourselves out of being so reliant on the federal government when it comes to being able to feed our citizens through a government assistance program. So we kind of took some power back there, and we have the ability to go back out should the federal government decide they want to make that process difficult. And so that's a huge win. We got some retail crime amendments into the crime bill. And we're going to make the strip safer, but we also increase penalties for folks who are committing retail crimes and do a lot of property damage to our small businesses who oftentimes can't get insurance for those coverages. We got some cleanup language in the healthcare bill on vaccines so that Nevadans continue to have access to all of the vaccines that they're wishing to be able to get, whether the federal government makes changes or not. And so there are some huge wins that we got out of this legislative special session. And so I think to kind of let the film tax credit overshadow that really kind of does a disservice, to what Nevadans walked away with that day.
All right, well then, we in the media are at fault for not promoting that, and thank you for laying out the victories there. Going back to the film tax credit for a moment, Mark Wahlberg, about 2 weeks ago now, said it's not a question of if but when. So I presume that there's, thought of coming back again, perhaps in the next session, to be able to promote this. And a viewer wrote me from Las Vegas over the weekend, having watched the show, and said, what about if we, did what the president is doing, which is tying some of these economic development issues to the federal government getting a cut of those? What if the state did that? And I'm thinking, well, there's two sides. If you're giving the tax credits, that's the benefit that the company wants. If you're asking for a cut of the profits, then maybe you're cutting into the whole concept of what the tax credits are all about. What's your thought on that? Should the government be involved?
My usual answer, Sam, is the government should be involved in very, very, very little. I think there were some important lessons to take from the film tax credit. So if we're going into round 4 or 5, whatever round that we're going into, the legislature was very concerned less about the fact that we need to invest for jobs. We understand where the economy is. They understood where construction jobs are. And you have a Democratic legislature who has been nothing but, to sometimes our chagrin, Sam, stewards of the union policy and their agenda. And so you have to ask yourself, well, then what was different in this case? And so I think in one way, the numbers just weren't going to pencil out. LCB came out and said the numbers went negative, right? So you're going to have to change that policy. From what I understand, there were amendments at the end of session that were starting to be discussed. The film folks didn't take them. And so perhaps there's a policy avenue there. But until you change the actual math, it's never going to pencil out. And so if you were coming at this from the need to put construction workers to work, Sam, and union workers to work, that's an entirely different conversation. And I think the legislature gets there. I think the question is just more, what are we investing in? What are we building? And what is the actual, at the end of the day, outcome for Nevada? And here, there seemed to be very little outcome at the end of the day for Nevada. Even if you accepted that we were going to lose 77 cents for every dollar that we were investing, because we were doing it for other reasons, it was just never going to pencil out. So, if the goal is to make sure we have construction jobs, that's a conversation the legislature should have. If the goal is we need to subsidize a film studio in Summerlin, then we've seen 4 times now that that's not going to happen.
All right, so for you, it's not really a question of, should the state, work its way into getting a cut of whatever it's doing as far as these tax credits. Because I mean, you look at the Tesla deal. Tesla made more money on selling their tax credits, $40 million out of the 50 million in tax credits than they made making cars that year. So,
You could argue that it was access to the cash, Sam, that really allowed Tesla to be able to balance some of their financial books.
Sure.
Because that's what they were needing. So I mean, if we get to the point where the state needs to own, I think you run into a constitutional problem. Um, I think we need to get more back in the business of how can we support that organic growth. What are some things that we could do regulatory wise that allow some innovation in Nevada? Some things that no other states are doing. And so there is a separate avenue of we can diversify the economy. We can allow economic development to take place in Nevada, but we don't have to pay for it as Nevada taxpayers. We can create an environment that allows it to grow. And I would much prefer that as an avenue to talk about these projects as opposed to in which way can taxpayers finance what every economic report you've ever read says is a bad economic deal for taxpayers.
And that's where we have to take a break. We'll be right back with Bryan Wachter after this timeout.
The Nevada Builders Alliance has been protecting the interests of the construction industry for over 50 years. Our programs save members thousands of dollars every year and allow them to provide much-needed benefits to their employees. Our industry also allows Nevada to grow. If you're thinking about a career in the construction industry, reach out. And if you haven't thought of a career in construction, what are you waiting for? We are the Nevada Builders Alliance.
For 50 years, Nevada Heating has been keeping people comfortable in their homes. At Nevada Heating, call the Do It Right guys and get the heat back on today. Call us today and we'll fix it today. That's the Nevada Heating way. Why freeze for days on end when Nevada Heating can get your furnace fixed today? Call us today and we'll fix it today at 323-5585 or schedule us on our website at nevadaheating.com.
The trucking industry is the most resilient link in the supply chain. And for over 90 years, the Nevada Trucking Association has been the voice for the men and women in the trucking industry. From Carson City to Washington, D.C., we advocate for policies to protect our trucking companies and keep commerce flowing. Because Nevada's and America's prosperity is tied to trucks. There's nothing without trucking.
And back on Nevada Newsmakers, we continue our conversation with Bryan Wachter. He's the president of the Retail Association of Nevada. And over the years on this program, he has been very much involved with the school district in Clark County and talked about it on this program. It was interesting to see, I think it was in the Reno Gazette-Journal over the weekend, that where in the past Washoe County's graduation rates had exceeded Clark County's, and people in the north were complaining over the years that the state's overall picture was not because of northern Nevada, but this time the Clark County graduation rates exceeded northern Nevada. Is this just a natural occurrence, or can Joan Ebert, the new school superintendent, take credit for this? How does this play out for you?
Well, we have a lot of optimism that the superintendent in Clark County is going to be able to leave her mark for the positive on CCSD. I think it might be a little bit too soon to look at last year's graduation rates. I think she'd only been in the job for several months at the time. So I think in terms of who to put that on, having done this for so long, Sam, I'm a little bit wary of the graduation rate number as a metric to begin with. When you start using a measurement as the metric, we start living to that. And so we include in that those credit retrieval classes. We're including in that, grades that perhaps shouldn't be given. So I don't want to suggest that it's inflated, but I don't think that if we're talking about the health of our education systems, whether it's Washoe, Clark, or Nevada in general, that the graduation rate is really what we should be looking at in terms of, is the public getting the best return on investment for the billions of dollars a year we spend in education.
Joan Ebert probably had the most positive responses, both in her state job and then being appointed to this job. Are you optimistic that after all the crises that we've seen in the Clark County School District over the years, that we finally have somebody in place who can actually get the job done right for our kids?
I think the superintendent is the right person at the moment. I put much less emphasis on the superintendent and more on the school board. When you have a functioning school board that understands their role and is actually providing accountability to the superintendent, and they are discussing things and debating things in such a way that their parent community, their teacher community, their administrator community feels like they're part of the conversation and that there is a long-term plan we're looking for, that is how we restore education and we get results out of Clark County, out of Washoe, out of anywhere. I am afraid that, and I will say this is one of the most tame Clark County education boards we've had in quite a number of years. But they are still lacking, I think, really hard accountability into that superintendent position. JARA went years without an employee review. I haven't seen that they've reviewed Superintendent Ebert yet. But I think until we return to the school board doing their job correctly, it is always going to be almost impossible for a superintendent themselves to make the lasting impact that we know they can make.
And that's where we have to leave it. Bryan Wachter, for you and all your members, a very merry and healthy financial Christmas, and we'll see you in the new year.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you, and we'll be right back.
Welcome to the Ahern Boutique Hotel, where luxury and warmth come together in the heart of Las Vegas.
We take pride in offering a one-of-a-kind experience for both locals and tourists.
Join us for handcrafted cocktails and an unforgettable experience.
Joel's Chop House, the perfect place to savor views of the Las Vegas Strip.
Satisfy your cravings at the Ahern Chocolate Shop.
No smoking, no resort fees, and the parking is always free. The Ahern Luxury Boutique Hotel is your home away from home.
A power line is more than a power line. It's maintaining the bottom line for small businesses. It's keeping the assembly line moving for our workforce. For our brightest minds, it's meeting a deadline. It's on the front line with our heroes. And on the sidelines of the biggest games. It's a direct line to our loved ones. And it's a lifeline for the most vulnerable. There's a lot on the line.
Each day, the Children's Advocacy Alliance partners with leaders, legislators, and families across Nevada to improve children's health, education, economic well-being, and safety. We recognize Nevada will be no better than the state of its children. Be a part of this change. Be a supporter of the Children's Advocacy Alliance. For more information, go to caanv.org.
Carson Valley Inn, it's your place for the good times. Carson Valley Inn.
Check out our archives section on NevadaNewsmakers.com. Great interviews going back as far as 2002. Really worth watching. We'll see you on the next podcast.